I mean, it's absolutely clear that that report was buried. There was evidence that it was buried, and that report wasn't shown to any other
Yeah.
sub postmasters that were taking actions against them. And it's my understanding that that would be an adverse document that would have to be showed
Yeah.
to an expert.
Tell us when, because the timings of this are important, when you found the problem and what happened.
So I was brought in by Post Office in 2003, brought in by their external law firm because they was taking action against a Cleveland's sub postmaster going back to the year 2000. So this was thought to be one of the first actions taken against a sub postmaster.
And what did they want you to do?
So they wanted me to take an independent view. This was ordered by the court. The court had said that both parties, both the Post Office and the Cleveland sub postmaster, must instruct a joint expert to examine the evidence and then report back to the court on what they'd found, and that is what I did.
And what did you find?
So, I mean, the conclusion of my report was that, quote, from a computer system installation perspective, it is my opinion that the technology installed was clearly defective in elements of its hardware, software, and interfaces. The majority of the errors that I've seen within the fault logs could not be attributed to the making of the sub postmaster or the operation of the system. I've also found worrying discrepancies in the audit. So the help desk operated by Post Office would seem to be more focused on closing calls rather than getting to the bottom of the continual reoccurrences.
And we'll come back to what, in layman's terms, what you actually felt about all of this. So say what happened then. So you're basically issuing this report back to the court saying, hang on a second, this is not human activity, this is computer error. You need to take that strongly into consideration. What happened next?
So I was called by Post Office's external legal firm to see whether there was any other material that I could look at that might persuade me to have a different opinion. I said that I'd continually ask them for additional data, and they said that none was available. But should any more data be available, then I would be happy to consider it. Ultimately, there was no data that was available, so they stood me down effectively as an expert, and they said that the parties had reached an agreed resolution and that my report did not need to go to the court.
So the report was never made public in that sense, but the Post Office knew, this is in 2003, the Post Office knew that an independent expert asked by them to look into the system said the system was faulty.
Yes, absolutely. And the only time that this document, this report, saw the light of day again was in the Post Office Horizon inquiry just last year. So I got the opportunity to give evidence to the inquiry, not just on the report from 2003, but I'd also then seen the additional email correspondence going between Fujitsu and Post Office, where they were trying to work out how to deal with this report. And ultimately, they said that, quote, the safest way to deal with this is to throw money at it and get a confidentiality agreement signed.
So they knew.
It would appear that, yeah.
So in your view, they knew that you'd said this is a systemic computer problem, and they wanted to shut you up, close that case down, and get this off the record.
Yes, absolutely. One of the quotes from that particular email that came out in the inquiry was they wanted to, quote, keep it out of the public domain.
So did you know, in layman's terms, though, with what you looked at, that there is a problem with the computers, and therefore there's a problem with prosecuting people for human fraud?
Yes. So I looked at 90 different calls that the Cleveland's sub postmistress had made to the help desk, and within those calls, 61 of those calls were as a result of a fault with Horizon, and therefore the data that was being produced by Horizon couldn't have been used in any civil or criminal action at that point in time. I also saw witness statements that post office staff had drafted and had submitted to the court, effectively supporting the robustness of Horizon. And I said in my report that what was recorded in those witness statements wasn't borne out in the technical evidence that I'd seen. And I said at the time that those witnesses were mistaken in what they'd said.
So let's call a spade here. You don't often see a cover-up that clearly. That's a cover-up, isn't it? You've witnessed a cover-up. It involves an external law firm. It involves the post office. It involves the legal process generally. Because if this is a court case, would you say would you be able to say, in your opinion, cover-up?
Well, I'm a technology expert, not a legal expert. So I won't give a view on that. I mean, it's absolutely clear that report was buried. There was evidence that it was buried, and that report wasn't shown to any other sub postmasters that were taking actions against them. And it's my understanding that would be an adverse document that would have to be showed to an expert.
So let me just
and then. Yeah.
Sorry, just let me reformulate the question before you go, because I understand that point you're making. Did the post office, in your view, therefore corporately and legally know in 2003 there was a huge problem with the Horizon system that might account for what was then prosecuted as fraud?
So I certainly in 2003 they knew that there was faults with Horizon. They may well say that I was reporting on a situation that was only occurring in 2000, because that's the data that I was looking at, and that their position might be that everything had been fixed since. But saying that, I was also involved in the 2016 to 2019 litigation with the Freaks law firm and Alan Bates, and all of the defects that I saw as part of that investigation were very similar in their making, and the approach that Post Office took to that was very similar to what I saw in 2003.
Jason Coyne, really clear stuff. Good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's Jason Coyne there, an IT consultant.